Welcome to the Rebound Las Vegas, our ongoing series designed to get you back to work and back in business. I'm Trisha Keene. We'll spend the next 30 minutes showcasing hot jobs, talking about ways to keep your family safe, and we'll also look at ways to manage that stress that so many are feeling. Here are this week's stories.
Now to the ongoing job hunt for thousands of Nevadans. Many people laid off during the pandemic continue to look for work.
13 Action News anchor Trisha Keene shows you the industries you may want to consider.
Morgan Baylor, like many other restaurant workers, found herself on the unemployment line last April.
During quarantine, a lot of people were out of work, a lot of restaurants were done.
But now she's back at work. Next to the hotel industry, restaurants were some of the hardest hit businesses during the shutdown last year.
I have a little taquito, fried taco.
Owner and chef Jose Salazar says now is the time to apply for restaurant jobs.
Everyone in our industry is hiring right now. It's actually hard to find people to work.
So with the help of employment site Monster.com, we found the jobs coming back fastest in 2021.
At Monster, we are seeing a return of jobs in the leisure sector, accommodation, and food services.
Monster's Vicky Salemi says you will find the most listings right now in hotels, restaurants, and nursing, which was hit hard last year when elective surgeries and doctor visits dropped. Then comes construction, especially home building in this red-hot home buying market. Next is shipping and logistics, getting goods from point A to point B.
We are looking to hire 1,000 people across the country.
Carrie Byrne is the president of Total Quality Logistics, the second largest freight brokerage firm in the nation. They need salespeople, accountants, freight brokers, and more. After shipping comes airlines, rehiring pilots, flight attendants, and gate workers. Then information technology, IT. Finally, daycare, as home-based workers move back to the office. Morgan Baylor is thrilled to be working again.
It's only going to go up from here.
So are you optimistic about the future?
I am. I think I'm an optimist by nature.
That was Trisha Keene reporting.
If I look out the window, I see planes taking off. And of course, not as often as used to be.
When Susan McMillian opened her kombucha brewery 6 years ago, she took a chance on its location.
We started out on a shoestring. That's basically why we call our company Bootstrap, because we really started out with nothing.
When they couldn't afford rent in a more walkable district,
Pink lemonade.
They landed on a space next to the San Diego International Airport.
That's why I got that 20-foot kombucha flag, so people could at least see us.
The tasting room became a convenient stop for travelers touching down in the city or on layovers.
They'll come in for a flight as well while they're waiting for their flight.
But the pandemic rounded roughly 30% of her customer base.
It was a very hard year for us.
But she's beginning to hear this sound more and more.
Some of the airlines are opening up fares to Hawaii, expanding routes. Those are all positive moves towards recovery.
At airports around the country, amenities like lounges, restaurants, and cell phone lots are reopening after more than a year.
We're excited to see some of these things return to normal. Not everything, but we are excited to see some of these things return to normal.
So far this month, TSA checkpoint numbers have surpassed 27.5 million passengers, up from nearly 3.5 million passengers this time last year.
It's safe to say, I think that with people getting vaccinated, they're feeling a little bit more confident.
But even as more people are vaccinated, you can expect many health and safety changes to remain at airports.
We are adhering to the federal guidelines. Wearing masks is essential. You must wear a mask in the airport. We also encourage people to social distance. All of the measures that we've taken to protect people are still in place.
And the recovery still has a way to go compared to pre-pandemic levels. By this time in 2019, TSA screened nearly 43 million passengers.
I consider myself pretty resilient anyway, and so it was a good test for that. You know, what does resilience really mean?
But with each plane that passes by, McMillian is hopeful more customers from around the world will drop into her tasting room.
Look us up online, Bootstrap Kombucha, have a flight, enjoy themselves, and spread the word.
I'm Amanda Brandeis reporting.
At the bookstore, Main Street reads.
You can't even imagine how many classics
that we've sold.
Stocked shelves provide a form of comfort food for the soul.
We think that it's because people want to gravitate towards something familiar.
An unfamiliar space navigated by everyone, including store owner Sherry Stauk. We first met her a year ago when the pandemic put the survival of her small business at stake.
It was terrifying for all the businesses. So we did a lot of things to kind of keep the community out and about and know that we're here.
While the country tries to get back to normal, small businesses may face a longer road back to normalcy. That's because many of them closed down and may never reopen again.
According to Opportunity Insights, a Harvard-based economic data tracker, when compared to January 2020, before the pandemic, the number of small businesses open in the U.S. is down by double digits in nearly every state. In South Carolina, where Main Street Reads is located, it's down by 26%. In Ohio, 30%. Florida and Arizona, 31%. Colorado, 32%. California, 36%. And in Michigan, it's down nearly 40%.
It has been very, very difficult for small businesses.
John Quee is a business professor at Georgetown University. He says during the pandemic, vulnerable businesses faced two options.
You can either adapt, right, or you can retreat.
And many chose the latter, cutting their losses and selling what assets they could.
Individually speaking, they're not as prominent as, big companies, right, that we hear about every day, but they're so important to the economy and they're so important to, people's livelihood.
So what to do? Quee says more government intervention geared towards small businesses may be needed.
The government has to come up with something helpful, something fair, right, and everybody has to agree with, and it takes time.
Time that may have run out for some. But for those that pulled through, there's gratitude for their customers and fellow small business owners.
I think what we really learned is that we all have something to teach each other, which has been great.
A lesson learned in lean times. In Somerville, South Carolina, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
Gary, Indiana, once a prosperous steel town, known as the birthplace of the King of Pop, it's now home to some 13,000 abandoned properties. More than 30,000 here live below the poverty line. But the city is experimenting with an economic shot in the arm.
What I have seen is people literally, if you give them the information that's needed, if you give them a hand up instead of a handout, they do good with it. Hi there, my name is
Burgess Peoples is the executive director of the Guaranteed Income Validation Effort, or GIVE. Over the next year, the program will give a supplemental $500 a month, no strings attached, to 125 Gary residents.
This little small part that I'm doing is just going to give people the finances to go and start spending money everywhere to try to help us all, build this city back up.
Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, a group of 44 mayors committed to tackling economic inequality, provided Gary with $500,000 in seed money it needed to get started. It's now one of 8 pilot programs that have been launched around the country. Another 10 have been publicly announced. The only eligibility requirements for participants were that they be at least 18 years of age, be a resident of the city, and not have an income of more than $35,000 a year. More than 4,000 people applied to the Gary program. The recipients were selected at random.
The initial reaction is this for real?
Peoples calls each one to break the news.
Your name is one of the names that were pulled to be selected as a recipient of the $500 for 12 months.
Oh, thank you, God.
Tammy Bourne Townsend, a mother of 2 and grandmother to 7, nearly missed her call. But when it came through, she was ecstatic.
I was like hollering and screaming and just overcome with the fact that I can see the light. I can see my goals coming closer.
One of her goals is to put that extra income toward buying a new home for her family.
Because I'm a working woman, okay? I don't mind working, but this is an opportunity for me to get ahead.
Gary is seeing some positive economic indicators. New businesses are moving in, development is starting up, and some, like restaurant owner Kendall McMiller, think Guaranteed Income will only help.
I think it will, because the funds that they get, they'll be able to spend in the community, which brings the community back up.
For now, Peoples gets to be a kind of fairy godmother, providing seed money for the most basic of dreams.
One mother, and it always get me. She had 4 children, and they have 1 bed. And so she said her first check that she received, she's going to buy beds for her and her kids. And that gets me every time.
Gary hopes their program will mirror Stockton's success of alleviating financial insecurity, doubling full-time employment, and enhancing mental well-being. Reporting from Gary, Indiana, I'm Usher Qureshi.
Welcome back to the Rebound Las Vegas. For more details on any of the stories that you're watching today, visit our website, ktnv.com/rebound.
The decision by the Clark County Commission today allowing Vegas to fully reopen on June 1st could pave the way for the Fortress to be full in potential later rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I spoke to several fans before tonight's game who say that they would welcome the opportunity to be back in a full Fortress. Go Knights, go! Woo! Vegas Golden Knights fans have had to ride the wave of 2 seasons in a pandemic. Last year's playoffs played entirely in a bubble with no fans allowed. This season starting with no fans and then allowing 15% capacity in March, or about 2,600 fans.
Even then, the energy, you could feel it. It was magnetic. It was amazing.
As the state and county eased restrictions, the arena saw more fans trickle in. With the Stanley Cup playoffs now underway, the Fortress is about half full.
Well, with the capacity increasing, it's been awesome. It's starting to feel more and more like the real deal, like we're used to.
What the fans are used to, a full and fiery Fortress, is what many say they're ready to get back to.
Well, I'm 100% vaccinated, so I'm comfortable.
No announcements have been made regarding capacity for potential future rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs here at T-Mobile Arena just yet. But of course, we will keep you in the loop as any updates do come out. Now, the Golden Knights are heading to Minnesota for games 3 and 4 of round 1. They will take on the Wild in Minnesota Thursday at 6:30. Reporting, Jackie Kostek, 13 Action News.
Welcome back to the Rebound Las Vegas. For more details on any of the stories that you're watching today, visit our website, ktnv.com/rebound.
We're seeing folks come in from all over the country who have reached that saturation point of anxiety, and it becomes like a disability. We can't function, we can't think, our brain is overwhelmed.
Dr. Gregory Jantz, a best-selling author, says anxiety cases are on the rise, mainly due to the long-term effects of this pandemic, with many feeling like they're barely hanging on.
When we have chronic stress that hasn't let up and we've isolated you, it's a ticking time bomb for anxiety and addiction.
To cope, people are eating or drinking too much, which then causes even more anxiety. So Jan says we need to do an anxiety reset, which starts with journaling to help identify your feelings.
We got to make some notes and go, here's my symptoms. I need to write some things down. I need to create an awareness. From awareness, I need to take some action.
And simplifying your life can help too, getting away from what triggers that anxiety.
If you're feeling anxiety, change your environment. You need to go outside. You need to pair that with moving.
Even emergency rooms are now seeing the mental health effects from this pandemic, often called COVID psychosis.
People are so overwhelmed that there's a break from reality because we all have that breaking point. And so we need to look, okay, what role does anxiety have in my life right now? I need to move beyond that.
And because anxiety is progressive, Jan says you may want to consider therapy or medication.
Give yourself 30 days. But after 30 days, if it's still there or it's worse, it's time to seek some additional assistance.
For so many months, these buildings have acted as barriers.
Yeah.
Barriers between a virus and its prey.
It's really hard to connect.
Barriers between us.
And to help those family members connect to their loved one who's so sick in bed.
So sometimes I feel like I become numb to what's going on or try to block it out, but I just had, that patient's family member crying on me, and, that for the past year is what we've been dealing with.
For more than a year, this has been the reality of both doctors and nurses.
So even though things are getting better, you still are bombarded with those constant reminders.
Still have those days.
So now, as a vaccine is doing its work, we wanted to break down those barriers and just listen.
Have either of you experienced that burnout that we've heard so much of?
I think you can't help but have a little bit of that at times.
Cry. I cry. Yeah. And it's okay. Because again, I mean, we have each other to help us. But, you know, I remember putting on my N95 mask for the first time in a couple months and just feeling my anxiety start to rise.
There's several things, or just you're sitting there and you're taking care of a patient and you remember something that's happened the past year. I just get emotional too, and it's hard not to kind of have a breakdown in a sense. But
When you can't do anything as a physician, you kind of have to take a step back and say, well, what did docs do for 2,000 years, right? What did we all do before we had antibiotics? And it was that we were there, it was that human experience of being there with someone with, you know, caring always, even though we can't cure.
Has the vaccine changed how things operate inside the hospital?
Well, I think yes. I think people have a far more comfort.
Oh, I think they've improved. It's just sad when we start getting more of those patients in, you know. But I would say overall, I think things have improved, and I think in the unit, our morale has also improved.
I think we have a very special bond on our unit, and if it weren't for them, it would have been an even more difficult year.
Do you see that light at the end of the tunnel, and how does it look now compared to maybe back in December even?
The light? Yeah, I see it. I mean, I see it as 70% or so more, hopefully more, getting vaccinated.
I guess I do see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It might just be a ways off.
You know, it's getting better, and it will continue to get better.
We're hopeful, and I think vaccines are going to take us to that next stage of normalcy, which I think we all hope for. And you know, as James said, you know, having those conversations is crucial, and we'll get there.
Welcome back to the Rebound Las Vegas. For more details on any of the stories that you're watching today, visit our website, ktnv.com/rebound.
Well, thank you. Well, that's what an owner of a new Henderson restaurant is now expressing to his customers.
That's right. Business is picking up after opening their doors during the pandemic. 13 Action News reporter Astrid Mendez takes you inside a breakfast hotspot in this latest edition of We're Open.
We have, you know, Campers French toast. We have a red velvet French toast.
Welcome to Scrambled on St. Rose Parkway near Coronado Center.
And then my favorite is the Ironman. It's a breakfast bowl.
Co-owner Donnie Savani aims to please. You could say he studied the restaurant business his whole life.
It actually started with my grandfather in the late 70s and 80s in Chicago. He actually had a few restaurants in downtown Chicago, and then through the years, my father picked it up.
Now Donnie is picking it up, but he's doing things different from those places run by his family.
And they were breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And, you know, it was very hard to do the staffing. Our biggest thing was to focus on what we're really good at, which was the breakfast, you know, area.
Donnie says his goal is providing quality food and the best operation possible. That starts with the employees.
We have, you know, an incredible staff. It's probably the best staff I've ever worked with. You know, everyone is awesome, friendly, energetic.
But none of that matters without the customers. And Donnie says business is good.
I don't think we'd be here if it wasn't for the community. You know, the community's had a huge role in supporting us and helping us throughout, in adjusting, you know, as we adjust to different capacity requirements, you know, different mask requirements, you know, different protocols. The community's been very, very supportive of us, and we thank them very much for it.
Astrid Mendez, 13 Action News.
For Margot Buddha, suiting up for work during the past year,
it seems like a big blur to me,
involved this.
And there was concern that there was not going to be enough PPE.
PPE, personal protective equipment, became a major part of Margot's work life, not at a hospital or a research lab, but here at Knollwood Life Plan Community.
Well, if you're over the age of 75, the last year and a half have been a little scary.
A senior living facility whose residents include military veterans and their spouses, all potentially vulnerable to COVID.
So we knew right away that testing was going to be a good way of finding out who's infected.
A nearly impossible task in the early days of the pandemic. So to protect residents and staff, Margot, a nurse clinic manager, took it upon herself to set up a COVID testing lab right here in this senior living community.
This is our instrument that we got, and we became certified with the Department of Health, the Forensic Science Division, and we just started testing anybody.
A move that potentially saved lives and now led Margot to a national award for her efforts from the Sika Foundation, a nonprofit that honors caregivers in some of America's 15,000 nursing homes.
Our job basically is to recognize these caregivers for outstanding acts of care, and many of them are under-recognized.
Founders Matt and Rosemary Lawler.
And it doesn't have to be a frontline worker, that the caregiver can be the person in the kitchen or the person mopping the floors. You'd be amazed at the relationships that some of them have developed with people, and we never even think of them.
But the pandemic began to change that.
It raised the appreciation people have for health caregivers.
And Margot's an unsung hero. She's not going to brag about herself. She's very much like soldiers that I served with in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Colonel Paul Bricker is Margot's boss and chief operating officer for Knollwood.
She would suit up in PPE and go out and test 80, 90-year-old residents, and you could see the fear in their eyes, but when Margot shows up, it almost builds confidence in them.
With nearly everyone here now vaccinated, the constant testing will likely wind down. For Margot, relief.
The pressure's a little bit off, and people have more of a sense of normalcy.
Thanks to the work of so many, including caregivers on the front lines. In Washington, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
Thanks for watching The Rebound Las Vegas on your favorite streaming device. If you missed any part of this week's program, just hit the back button on your remote and scroll down until you see The Rebound, and you'll find every segment we aired in this episode. Stay tuned for more from 13 Action News after the break, and check us out anytime here on KTMV Streaming, Las Vegas News on your time.